In this video, we're going to show you how to import data into your Metasys database. Now, we're presuming that you've got an Excel spreadsheet that you've already gone and created a walk list, gone out there, done all your door knocking, or at least door knocking for a period of time, and that you want to import this information. There are two ways we can do it. Of course, you can enter it by hand, which is time consuming, and if you have a volunteer, that may work out well. But maybe you're a little short on volunteers and you need to get this information in pretty quick. And so the second way we can do it is by the import function. Now, the import function is an advanced function, so you may not have access to it, and if you don't have access to it, give us a call and we'll make sure that you do. I don't typically give access to that right off the bat because you can mess up your system. So I give you this video with a little bit of a caveat that you can mess up your data. And as I've mentioned to probably all of you, this is your data in your database. So if you mess it up, you're going to be very unhappy, and I'm going to be unhappy as well. So be very careful in importing data into your system. But again, if you don't have access to it, let us know, and we'll be happy to give it to you when you feel comfortable. So again, we're going to assume that you have already done a walk and that your information is stored in an Excel spreadsheet, of which I'm going to pull up our Excel spreadsheet here. And this is an exported Excel spreadsheet walk list. And I'm just using some sample data and a local database on my machine here just to give us an illustration for this. And what I've done is I've hidden a number of the columns here on the Excel spreadsheet. So yours may not look exactly like this. It may be a little bit more expanded. As we import this information, the only two columns that are of importance to us are, of course, the voter ID column and the column called supporter_state_rep. Now, you may not have that heading, but this column is going to be the column where you have logged in all of your door knock IDs. So you can see we have some undecided, yes, leaning for, not home, things of that nature. And if you don't have this column outlined here, if you don't have the heading supporter_state_rep, go ahead and just change the header to whatever column you've recorded your information in as supporter_state_rep, because we're going to need that, and it's going to make our life a little easier when we import it into the system. So we've got our information here, and we first need to what we call scrub this data. As we import information, we want to be careful that we're not overwriting people that we've already imported or logged into the system. And so one of the ways that we do that is we want to make sure that we take out anybody who has a blank field in this supporter state rep column. So you can see there's a number of those because, of course, we don't hit every door, and people aren't home, or people within the house, it depends on who we see. So we're going to end up with a lot of blank spaces, and we want to get rid of all of that. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to select all of the information, and we're going to use our drop down on the Sort and Filter button to choose Custom Sort. And when we do that, let me get rid of some of these old sorts here. When we do that, we're going to want to sort on this supporter state rep field. So I'm going to choose supporter state rep. I can leave it A to Z, that's fine. And what it does is it lines everybody up. So now everybody that has something in that field starts first. So you start with the LAs, the LFs, etc., etc. We're going to go work all our way down here to the yeses. And then you see we come to the point where there's no other data recorded. So we need to get rid of these records because, again, we don't want to import blank information over what may potentially be already recorded information. So we're going to choose that row. I'm just going to choose the entire row, and I'm going to go to the bottom of the Excel spreadsheet all the way to the end, and there's the end. I'm going to hold my Shift key down and choose the last record so that everything is selected. I'll right click and I'll delete it. And what happens, of course, is that leaves me with only the those records that have something recorded in the supporter state rep field. Okay? So we're going to save that. I've saved that to my Dropbox. And now we're going to go back to FileMaker, and we're going to start this import process. Now, again, one of the things that we want to avoid is overwriting information that we've had before. Let's say, for example, that you've knocked on a door or you've previously identified somebody as a supporter. So let's say this particular person we've identified as a supporter. I'm just going to say yes here. They're identified as a supporter. We want to make sure we don't overwrite this person's information. So what we're going to do is we're going to filter out those records. So I'm going to go click Find, and I'm going to say find me records that are either yes, new request, which of course if you looked at some of the earlier videos about searches, new request creates a second find, which is actually an OR statement, or no. The other ones we don't mind necessarily overwriting, lean for, lean against, undecided. If you wanted to save those, you'd have to do another request and just choose those fields. But right now we have two fields. We are looking to find those records that contain either a yes or a no. And I'm going to click Perform Find. Now I think I'm only going to find one, the one I just did, because I didn't tag anybody before this. But the process will still be the same. We may find a number of records, and then what we're going to do is we want to omit those, so we're going to click on the little pie chart right here. And when we do, watch this, we found one record out of 106,000. When I click it, it's going to say we now have 106,847 out of 106,848. So basically what we did was we said when we clicked the little pie chart, it just said, give me everybody else except for those ones that were found. So now I can import the information, and I can be sure that we're not going to overwrite anything that's sensitive. Okay, because all of these supporter fields now will be blank. So I'm going to go ahead and click File, Import, and Import File. And it's going to bring me up the Open a File dialog box here. And of course it's already open to the place I want to go, but you may have to navigate to it. And I'm just going to click on Walkbook. That's the one we created. It's going to bring up the Import Field Mapping pop-up here. And this looks really complicated. But what we're going to do is we're going to start down here, and we're going to make sure that we have checked Update Matching Records in Found Set. This is the found set, the 106,847 out of 106,848. We don't want to import the first record because it contains field names. And we do not want to add remaining records as new. We want to leave that unchecked. So you want to just update the matching records, and then we don't want to import the first record. And then here it's going to say, well, what is it that you want to import? What matches? I'm going to go ahead and click on the Arrange By drop-down, and I'm going to choose Matching Names. And I've been given all the names that match, and actually you're going to get a few of them because it was exported from your system, so the names are going to match up. But again, as we mentioned earlier, the only ones we're interested in are the supporter state rep, which is why we changed that name so it would match up, and the voter ID. I'm going to click on these guys. They'll turn to an equal sign, but I'm going to click on them twice to get rid of them. So we're saying we don't want these things imported over. What's all this mean? We'll talk to you about that in just a second. Let me get rid of this stuff. I'm only interested in voter ID and supporter state rep. The arrows mean I'm going to import from the source, from my spreadsheet. I'm going to import it to the target fields in the database. And again, only because I want to support the import the voter ID, I want to import this supporter state rep, I need to identify who I'm going to import it on, and that's this voter ID. So when I click the arrow once, I get an equal sign. So when voter ID equals voter ID, import the supporter state rep to the supporter state rep field. And actually, if I click on the arrow next to the field names here, I can see that I got 632. And you can see that it'll show up with the voter ID lean for, and I could just kind of go through that and see who's going to be imported. So it looks like we're ready to go. I'm just importing this one field, but I'm checking the voter ID to make sure it gets imported to the right person. I'm going to click Import. It's going to just give me some import options. I'm not really concerned about those right now. Import it again. And we'll see a dialog pop up, and you can see it's working its way down. It's importing all that information. And we can see that it imported 632 records. Our pie chart up top, let me hit OK here. Our pie chart up top indicates we are now sorted on or filtered on the 632 records, and we can see that they have been tagged as different IDs in there. And so now we have that information. It's been imported. Now we could just do a quick find and say, well, how many of those yeses did I get? I got 169 yeses. How about no's? I got 72 no's, so life is good. And again, so it's a very quick, easy way, much easier, of course, than doing it all by hand, but it's an easy way to import that information. But as you can see, it's a little bit complicated, so you do need to be careful in what you do, and you do need to make sure that that you understand this process, because if you import it, you can overwrite things, and you don't necessarily want to do that. Actually, you definitely don't want to do that. So you do need to be careful. If you have questions, give us a call, and good luck.